So I was watching Charles Payne and from Fox Business, and he said something interesting that got me going. He says, one of the biggest issues that we have that nobody's talking about is the connection between birth rate and the affordability of homes. So let me explain. So a lot of people aren't having kids earlier in life. They're waiting for because they always feel like, hey, before I have kids, I have to have, the job and I have to have the house. So since they can't afford to buy a house now, they might have to wait 5, 6 more years because the average age of people buying a house is increasing. So now that people are having less kids and they're waiting longer in life. So it's causing a big problem because people don't talk about this and saying, hey, what is the biggest problem going on? Yes, it's cost of homes. Yes, it's everything. It's, inflation, it's property tax, homeowners insurance, you name it. I can give you 1,000 problems. But one of the biggest things that are going to bite us in the butt is that people aren't having kids. And one of the main reasons they're not having kids is because they can't afford to buy a house. So we're going to jump into this. It's a really serious subject that we need to talk about. Nobody's discussing it. I'm glad Charles Payne brought it up. I did some research into it, and let's get into it. In the meantime, if you like this kind of content, consider subscribing. It really does help out the channel. It's greatly appreciated. And if you need a real estate agent anywhere in Tampa, Florida, United States, my phone number is below, and there's a link below too. All right, let's get started. Okay, let's look at some quick facts real quick, okay? The U.S. birth rate slipped to 53.8 per 1,000 women between the ages of 50 and 40 and the age 44 in 2024. Okay, so less and less people are having kids. The housing affordability index, this is an important one, okay, was 94.4% in June 2025, below the 100 means median family. So basically, it dropped down to 94%, so it's below what the average family could even afford to buy a house. Okay? Cost burden, 30% of people see when people get mortgages and stuff, the sweet spot is that only 30% of your income is going towards housing cost. Insurance, mortgage, taxes, all that stuff. But now some people are going to 40, 45%. And not only on top of that, but they need two incomes in order to afford to even make it. So if one of them loses their income, say it's a husband and wife or a partner, whatever, and one of them loses their job, they can't afford that house. And that puts enough stress on people to say, you know what? We can't afford to buy this house, so let's hold off until we're more stable and we save up more money. And then once we have the house, then we'll consider the kids. And before, they might have wanted to have 3 kids, but now they might go down to 1 kid or 2 kids. A lot of this has changed since 2007, okay? I went back and looked at those stats and everything, and in 2007, that wasn't that long ago. If you really think about it, people were having more kids, they were buying houses at a younger age, and then inflation kicked in, and then we had the pandemic and prices skyrocketed, and then people, got mortgages in the threes, and now they don't want to sell the house because they're in the threes. They don't want to go into the sixes or the sevens for a mortgage. Okay, so not only are we having a problem of people wanting to sell their houses, but then we have a problem on the other end, the people that want to buy a house, they can't afford a house. So what they're doing is they're renting longer. And in return, they're putting everything that's important to them on life on hold. And this is going to, I'm telling you, this is going to come back and bite us in the butt, big time. First time buyers, because of what happened with the financial crisis and the real estate crash of 2008, now banks are more cautious because they don't want to, push people into mortgages that they know long term they won't be able to afford. So the first time buyers fell to a record low of 24%, okay? And the median age for first time buyers hit 38. And that's from NAR. That's crazy because, like me, when I was younger, yes, I'm talking going back to the 80s, but I was like 19 when I bought my first house. Ownership under age 35 dipped to 36.4% in Q2 of 2025, which is really freaking low. Okay. Why renters are feeling the squeeze? So when buyers feel the squeeze that they can't afford a house, everybody's piling into rentals, and because they're piling into rentals, everybody else is, and it's elevating the cost of the rental. Now it's giving them a much harder time to even be able to afford to save enough money to go in and buy a house because the rents keep going up, up, and up. Here's some other facts too that are interesting. Okay, a 10% rise in home prices cuts birth rates by 1% among non-owners in a typical metro. So you think about it. So if 1%, it probably doesn't sound like a lot, but listen, if we have 60 or 70% increase in prices, or 100%, what a lot of areas happen, prices have doubled, you're talking about maybe 10% reduction in birth rate. That's huge. That's crazy. So living in expensive housing market is linked to delaying birth for the first 3 to 4 years. Women delay family formations because of housing, because the housing market is expensive. So when people have a choice and say they're renting and they're like, okay, should we buy a house or should we have a kid? Most people are going to actually pick, let's buy a house first, which in return delays everything. Let's look at some quick facts, okay? And this is really interesting, okay? Americans need $112,131 a year to afford the median price U.S. home, and that's as of August 25 from a Redfin news report, okay? The typical monthly mortgage payment fell to $2,631 in mid-August 2025, but still takes a big bite out of, think about it, $2,631 a month for the average mortgage, okay? A median income buyer should spend they're spending like 39% of their income just to be able to pay their housing when it should be 30%. So do I blame them for delaying having kids? Kids are freaking expensive. Okay, it's great, but at the same time, the population is getting older, and we're having less and less kids, being born, and who's going to take care of everybody that's getting older? It's going to be a total disaster. They're not even building. Now they're starting to build smaller homes because either people are having less kids, so they don't need as big of a home, or some areas are building bigger homes because multi-generations of people are moving into the house just to be able to afford it. And sometimes that doesn't really always work out. So think about it. And let's talk about Florida because that's where I'm from, okay? The average homeowner insurance in Florida is $5,728 a year for basically a $300,000 policy, okay? Some South Florida, like Miami and some areas, Broward County, you're talking about over $10,000, okay? In Miami, you need about $110,000 a year to afford a typical rent. That's just a rent, okay? And $151,163 for a typical home. Where's there room to buy clothes for kids, formula, you know? So yeah, so people are like, you know what? We want to buy a house, but maybe we're not ready to have kids. Why Florida cost hits families differently. HOAs. So in Florida, like I always said, it would be the perfect world if we could take care of the stupid HOA fees that keep increasing. Nobody knows where the money goes to. The property taxes that keep going up. And like people are saying, I was just watching on Facebook, and everybody's complaining, oh, my taxes went up, my estimate, but my value went down. And people really don't understand how it works. So basically, let me give you a quick rundown. Let's say you bought a $200,000 on a house in Florida to keep it simple, but then it increased to $400,000. Okay, the value. But now, because the market is becoming soft, it goes down to $300,000. All right. What's going to happen is your tax is going to go up every year, 2.9 or 3% every year till they reach that 300,000. So there's an equilibrium. So yeah, your value might have dropped from where it was last year, but your property taxes are probably still going up. Or there's other factors too, but that's one of the biggest ones too. So it's not it's not an easy situation to solve. I mean, how do you solve people not having kids? You know, what's the incentive? The only way to make it incentive for people to have kids is to make everything more affordable. You know, the government is talking about doing an emergency declaration on housing. What does that mean? You know, they're talking about moving some regulations to make it easier for permitting to build new homes and everything, and maybe lowering interest rates, you know, will increase it. But at the same time, that's not an overnight solution. And I don't see houses dropping. Like, I really think in order for houses to be affordable, they need to drop like 30%, 40%. And I don't see that happening because the average person doesn't make $120,000, $130,000 a year. That's not the average income. But you know, all the stats that I'm looking and saying, oh yeah, if you want to buy this house, you need to make at least 120,000, 115,000, and that's just not the facts of life. So, I mean, what could be done? I mean, I guess nothing could be really done. I mean, people just need to save their money and put a bigger down payment on the house so they have a lower mortgage payment so they could afford to have kids. Or, you know, have multi generations move into the same house so they could afford to have kids. Or move to a different area that's more affordable. So, I mean, there's things you could still do, but definitely not as easy as people saying, and you know, people are going to comment on this video saying, hey, you know what, you're not really giving any solutions, because I don't have a solution. I honestly don't have a solution. I just did some research into this, and when Charles Payne said that, and he says that the birth rate, you know, is a direct effect on housing. I knew about that because Elon Musk was talking about it too. You know, that's the birth rate is going to be a big problem all over the world because, you know, one generation is getting older and we're having less and less young people. Um, But after doing some research on it, it's kind of scary if you really, really think about it. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Comment below. Tell me what you guys think. You know, what is the solution for this? But I just want to do a quick video to explain to everybody and make people aware of this because, and I'm noticing too that, you know, a lot of younger families that I know, they have one kid, two kids. Some of them have no kids. For the first time, I know 5 couples that, you know, they've been married for a while and they have no kids at all. And I'm like, wow, you know, and I never went up to them and say, hey, how come you didn't have kids? Because, you know, that's not my place to say that. But it could just be as simple as affordability. I know, you know, one of them, they were in their 40s and, you know, and they bought their first home. They were renting before that. Maybe that's why they didn't have kids. Maybe they just couldn't afford a house and they needed the house first. And now maybe they feel they're too old, or maybe they feel the economy or is not stable enough, you know, because I think the economy as we knew it, you know it, is gone. I think it's very unstable. And I'm not trying to be negative Willie here. I know a lot of people saying, oh, you're just negative. I'm just saying I don't feel the stability like it used to be, you know, 10, 15 years ago. All right. 10, 15 years ago, I kind of could predict what was going to happen. Now, I don't know where we're going to be a month from now, you know, economy, you know, wise, you know, it's just, it's a crazy situation that we're in. And yeah, in order for the birth rate to go up, we got to figure out this housing problem. I think that's the number one thing. People want houses before they have kids. Anyways, comment below. Tell me what you guys think. Anyways, I really appreciate you guys watching the channel. Like always, consider subscribing. It really helps out the algorithm, really helps out the channel, and it's greatly appreciated. If you need a real estate agent anywhere in the country, let me know, especially here in Florida. And watch this video right here. I picked it out just for you. Thank you, and have a great day. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.